We're in Joe's office at Cheap Joe's Art Stuff with Bev Jozwiak. Jozwiak. Okay, so everybody's asking me how to pronounce your name.
Nobody knows.
Jozwiak.
Jozwiak.
So, and you are from Washington?
Mm-hmm.
So you're a West Coaster, and you're on the East Coast now. So in talking to you previously, do you make it to the East Coast very often, or?
I do not make it over here that often, and I'm kind of going to cut back even more.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stay more on the.
So I think you're a star on the East Coast, though. You filled up your class, 25 people, and you had 19 people on the waiting list. So we could have done an extra class, and but you know that. So in looking at your art, for people that really are not familiar with you, and in talking with you yesterday, we kind of came to the conclusion that you are a representational artist.
Correct.
Who kind of, how would you describe your representational art?
I consider it impressionism.
Okay.
Because I like varied color. I like that color next to color, and so I think I'm an impressionist.
So
but a little bit abstracted too.
Kind of abstract background,
right,
with a representational figure. I mean, you're mostly a figure artist.
Right.
It seems
figures and animals.
Figures and animals.
I say painting life with life.
And I was talking to Joe earlier, and he's really impressed with you as an artist. And I think we talked a little bit about that. People that are painters, and so you told me something about your style. You paint. What was you don't paint.
I paint shapes.
You paint shapes.
Not objects.
Not objects. Okay. What does that mean technically?
That means rather, especially like say on a face.
Okay.
Rather than painting eyes, nose, mouth, I look for the lights and darks.
Okay.
And paint those shapes, and then that just gives you that structure of the face. So I don't consider myself a real detailed painter.
Okay. But yet, at the same time, your paintings elicit a lot of detail.
I think if you get the shapes right, it ends up looking realistic, even though it isn't.
Yeah.
It simplifies it.
And you're not 2 weeks to do one painting kind of artist.
No. At home, I'm a little slower than in workshops.
Okay.
But like today, I did a pretty complicated 2 chefs.
Okay.
It took me maybe an hour and a half. And they had grills and steam and pots and...
So your class, the people that are taking your class, they leave with paintings?
They leave with paintings, but I don't really encourage them to try to get a good painting.
Okay.
I try to encourage them to learn and to go home and incorporate that into their own work.
Okay. And that's kind of the next question that I ask every artist that I talk to is, as an instructor, you have a awesome responsibility to those 25 people that have
to impart
spent
your knowledge.
money. So what do you want them, what do you want them to leave with? What do you want them to go home with? What's your goal for their week here?
Well, I'm definitely trying to get them to see the shapes.
Okay.
Because I think when I learned that, I actually learned that from Charles Reed.
Okay.
And that is when that light bulb turned on, it changed my world on how I painted and improved it. So I'm trying to get them to see that. And I'm also trying to get them to see varied color, very much so. Like, instead of just seeing a green grass and painting it's plain green, I want them to see that, no, there's nuances, and add some blues and add some yellows. And so that's, so varied color, shapes, design, trying to get that design of lights and darks wove through your paintings.
Right. So you mentioned Charles Reed. Is there any other artists that you were influenced by?
Arnie Westerman.
Arnie Westerman, okay.
And he just died this year.
I used to get his email.
Yeah.
Westerman Art.
Yeah, he just died this year. Right. He gave people their artistic license.
Right.
He used to give them their little license when they were done. And he was, those probably have been the 2 biggest influences on my art.
Well, Charles Reed is a big influence on a lot of people. People have taken his approach and done different things with it. And I think that's probably
I think mine is almost, it's kind of like almost a mix of the Arnie, because he was
Okay.
thicker and darker, but I feel like I've caught some from both of them, and then made it my own.
Okay. When did you realize you were an artist, or you wanted to be an artist?
I don't ever remember not being one.
Okay.
My father did pastel
Okay.
animal life. My grandmother drew and painted.
Wow.
And I graduated in fine arts in 1976 with a fine arts degree and an art history minor.
Okay.
And then it was the 70s and nobody gave you any practical knowledge of what you should do with that. And so I went to work packing potato chips at Frito-Lay. And did it until I
Yeah.
kind of had a crisis that I always wanted to be an artist. And
Yeah.
I quit and just really, I kind of just messed around with it for
Right.
quite a few years. And then at 35, I thought, if you're going to be an artist, you better start now.
Okay.
And so I just dove in and worked so hard to become an artist and to get to do it full time and as a living.
I can see that little sticker, inspected by Bev.
Yes, exactly.
So we're doing all this, and part of the reason I talk to the artists that filter through Cheap Joe's is to kind of, people that don't know you might want to get to know you and take a class. So are you going to be back at Cheap Joe's?
They asked already. They asked me to come back in September of this year,
Really?
but I was booked.
To fill in?
Yeah, to fill in for somebody. I'm not sure who.
So next year or 2019?
It would
or-
probably be 19 if I
Okay.
came back because I'm pretty booked all the way through.
So all of you that are
18.
watching the video, it's probably going to be 6 months before you can sign up. But,
Yeah.
because that's part of the whole thing, is that I think I like to introduce people, and you're a West Coaster, and I guess you've always been a West Coaster.
Yes, I was born and raised in Vancouver.
Okay.
I lived in California for a few years and went to college in Bellingham, which is almost up the Canadian border.
Vancouver, British Columbia?
No, Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver,
I'm really
Washington?
5
Okay.
minutes from Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Portlandia.
Yeah, Portland. Yeah, I'm right across the bridge from
Okay.
the Columbia River divides Portland and Vancouver.
I was in Seattle at one point for a few weeks.
Yeah, see, it's about 3.5 hours to Vancouver from Seattle.
Okay. And then there's Mount Rainier?
There's Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, all right, kind of
Okay.
right there.
So from downtown Seattle you can see,
That's probably Rainier.
okay, Rainier, yeah. I remember talking to my wife about a all-night restaurant off the campus there, kind of, that had the best hash browns
Oh
in
yeah,
the world. And
that wasn't Beth's, was it?
yeah, it might have been. And it was just, I remember the guy, he was an artist. What do they call those, fast cook? Or
Oh yeah.
a quick cook artist. So anyway. Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with, Beth, in terms of encouraging people to keep going? Is there any kind of, did you ever get to a place where you kind of went, I don't know whether I can do this, and something clicked?
Yes, of course. But I read this book by Louis Learman. He used to
Okay.
write books a while ago on art, and it was called, I think you can still get it. It's called Becoming a Successful Artist.
Okay.
And there was interviews with, I think, Nita Ingalls and Arnie Messer was one of
Okay.
them, and there was like 20 interviews. And I read that book. It was my Bible, and every time I would get kind of down, I would read that book because they interviewed them all separately, and they all sort of said the same thing: tenacity wins out over talent every time.
Well, that's a good.
And I think that's the truth. So if you're not feeling good, just keep at it. It's miles on the brush that makes you good.
Miles on the brush, yeah, that's. Bev, it's been a pleasure talking to you,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully we'll see you again in the not too distant
Yeah.
future. And you've got 2.5 more days, I guess.
Yes, 2.5 more days,
So, wow.
which is probably for me 4.5 more paintings. No, I'm a fast.
And you're
painter.
selling them as fast as
Yes,
you
of course.
paint them right now. Well, that's part of the whole thing. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.